Today is August 22nd, 2025, and we are here in Houston, Texas. I'm Jacob King, and I'm interviewing Huey German Wilson for Sears Hurricane Heroines Oral History Project. Before we begin, I must ask, are you okay with this interview being recorded and saved for project archives?
Yes, I am.
Awesome. So my first question is, could you begin by telling us a bit about your early life growing up in Houston and your experience in the environmental justice movement?
Uh, so I'm Huey German Wilson. I grew up in Trinity Gardens. My family's lived here always. My great grandparents plotted some of the original property on the street where I currently live, and so there's been a German in this community since it was conceived. So. My parents were very engaged in all things union, basically, but that bled over into environmental spaces because they were engaged in the community. And we ended up, as a young child, I ended up picketing the Whispering Pines landfill because my dad and his friends decided that day that they had had enough and they were not going to allow them to expand that Whispering Pines landfill. And there were probably a couple of hundred people out that day, and they took us all out as children. And as a kid, it was like a picnic. Until you got there and realized, no, it's not a picnic. We're picketing, and we're not going to have it, and uh, just a very honest form of protest, right? And my dad he and his friends end up going to jail. And the thing is that we're still kids, and my dad knew that my mom would kill him and every other guy if their kids ended up downtown. So they allowed my sister, who was just barely able to drive, to take us all back home. And we continue to fight that landfill expansion basically up until today. We're still fighting about that. It should have been closed. It hasn't been. But the segue is Dr. Bullard. That was his first endeavor into environmental justice because he was asked to lead that effort for TSU, and he worked with my sister, and then here we are 40 years later. I said 40, but it's actually longer than that, Jacob. Probably 50 years later, and I'm working with Dr. Bullard on the very same issues, except they've expanded so dramatically to the air quality that we have and water quality that we have in these communities around not only landfills but concrete batch plants. We are Trinity Gardens. We're at the intersection. We're a triangle for all things railroad. So we have a rail line to the east of us and a rail line to the south. And so we've got these big rail yards that are, we don't know what comes in, and it's nobody talks to us. In addition to that, they affect the way our drainage happens in our community. So we find that near the railroad, those communities flood. And they're exposed to things that we have no idea about because the railroad doesn't have to tell us. But there's no buffer there to keep that separate from the rest of our community. But that's where we land, or where I started this whole thing at maybe 8 or 9 years old. And now I'm 61 and I'm still doing this work. And training my children actually on how to do it and other community members so that may not realize a solution to this in my lifetime, but certainly there will be a solution for this.
Absolutely. Gotta keep hoping.
Yes.
I guess that actually answers one of the questions I wanted to ask you earlier, but that's okay. We can go on to the next one. Houston has had a lot of environmental devastation through different storms. I was wondering if which Houston area disaster storm or weather event impacted you the most, and what was your reaction at the time?
Well, that's kind of difficult. Having lived here my whole life, Alicia was very devastating. The hurricane that happened in 82, 83. Alicia happened in 83. And it was the first hurricane that I remember vividly because the tornadoes that it spawned had a wide array of damage. So my mom's house was damaged. It took the roof off. It peeled back carports. It took the fences all up. And this was in Trinity Gardens. And for blocks and blocks and blocks, the same thing happened. A different time for environmental stuff and devastation. And so I moved quickly to the next hurricane that I remember that was devastating was Ike. And it was because it devastated this area in a different way. And we didn't have power for 2 weeks. Um, maybe people just expected not to have power before that and they were okay with it. But when Ike happened, we didn't have power. We ended up running for about 5 or 6 days, maybe 10, but I remember 5 for sure. We used a school KIP over on Mesa and Tidwell so that we fed the community. And we had 18-wheelers coming in with food and water and ice to feed the community for about 5 days. And we didn't ask any questions. So I couldn't tell you if we served 5,000 people or 50,000 people, except that the traffic was from the intersection of Tidwell and Mesa all the way back to the intersection of Tidwell and Wayside, which is probably a mile. And so we had traffic so bad that the Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, the late Congresswoman, could not get in by car. They helicoptered her into where we were. And it was that bad for at least 5 to 7 days. And school still didn't start for another week after that. So I think it was 10 days that we had no power. And so and the community was devastated again in a different way. It was a windstorm. And so it did a different thing. And most people, probably 50% of the people out here don't have insurance. And that's another thing that we really need to talk about because the price of insurance is going up and it's pricing us out. And so the 50% that did have insurance now can't afford it, or it's not even available because they're non-renewing and leaving the state. But then we moved to Harvey, which was the beyond my wildest dreams and nightmares in terms of things that could happen. And so we were working during Harvey, and we started what essentially was the Resilience Center at Trinity Gardens Church of Christ, because the church is where I go to church and where we already had a pantry set up. So we had some things that we needed there. And that's what we were thinking is, okay, it's a place we have things we need. People know it to be a pantry, so they didn't mind coming there. And so we served about 5,000 people over that month. We gave them the things that they needed. And those resources came from, we have no idea to this day where some of those trucks came from. But these people also told us where the devastation was. So we ended up every day giving out supplies at the building and then driving out to Lakewood and City Gas and Cashmere Gardens to give people who had lost their cars, they lost their houses they were living in, and they didn't have any way of figuring out how to mutt and gut that or any money to do it. But every day we drove out to different areas and gave them the things we were giving away at the Resilience Center. So we gave them toilet paper, paper towels, food, non-perishables, water, ice. And again, this stuff came to us by way of people driving in from all over the country. And they found us. We didn't have to call anybody. They called us and said, we have some stuff. Can we bring it to you? And so we were able to help about 5,000 people. We were open for 30 days solid. And, but those people at the corner of, and I can't ever remember, Halls Bayou and Greens Bayou in Lakewood, are almost at the intersection of two watersheds. And so we saw devastation up to the second floor of houses. Um, mailboxes, brick mailboxes that were moved over, houses that were lifted off their foundations because they sat in water for so long. We lost a family of four, I think it was 4 or 5 people at that Halls Bayou, Greens Bayou intersection in Lakewood. And so it's been a rocky journey, and every hurricane brings about its own type of disaster. So Harvey was the last most devastating. Even though we had Beryl last year, Beryl was devastating in a different way. Again, it was a windstorm, very different. We lost a lot of trees. We're very rich in a canopy out here, and we lost probably 40% of our tree canopy.
Wow. That's that's
And it ended up in people's houses. It wasn't like the trees just fell over. They fell over. I've seen houses that had trees that were standing up in the middle of their house. So the tree was literally lifted up from the roots, and the roots and all just sat down. And it wasn't in your yard necessarily. It might have been your neighbor's tree. It sat down in the middle of your house, like it grew there overnight.
wow.
We saw, for blocks and blocks and blocks, trees that were falling just willy-nilly across the streets. And I don't recall how many people died, or that anybody died exactly from a tree falling on them, which is a miracle because of the amount of trees that we lost. I wish I'd counted, but I didn't, and I don't know that anybody has a good count of it. I know how many trees we had and how many trees we have now, and it's a big difference.
Yeah, that's a lot. I want to ask you about experiences. So, what do you feel gets left out of when talking about the experiences that women go through in these climate disasters?
Um, Women typically don't make as much money as men, nor do we do the jobs that men do. So, historically, I did see quite a few women cutting down trees for us during Beryl, and during the derecho, as a matter of fact, which happened in May. But we don't make as much money. So people often think we're sitting around waiting to volunteer because that's what we do. So we get left out of all these other opportunities, electricians, plumbers, all this other stuff, because that's not the work that we do. And so it's like, you're volunteering because you were sitting home waiting for this opportunity to come out of your house and do something. But we all work. Women work, even if it's in the home. If you had to account for what it took to cover for not having your wife in the household, it's not free. But oftentimes we're working other places. We have nurses that go and work an entire night shift and volunteer with us during the day. And nobody looks at them the same as they look at the guy who brings his truck to, pick up boxes and do that thing. And I don't discount them either. I think they're great. But women miss out financially, health wise. You should never be too tired to do this work, is what I hear so often. And so we ignore our health a lot of times because of the kind of work that we choose. And it's so front facing for the community. The community knows you, so they're not looking at you as a person that has all the same issues. Um, our churches, the church community, typically their volunteer base is women. They're coming out. They're going to do whatever they need to do for their church home. And we discount that work completely, as in its importance, the administrative side of this. So quite literally, you've got women running that administrative side and volunteering. Usually men don't get into the administrative piece. That logistics piece, if you look at anybody that's employing folk and doing logistics work, they make 6 figures. But when we're doing that work in the community, people are like, you should just know how much water you're going to need. You should know all of these things. but that takes training. So we actually train our own disaster case managers because we want to make sure that they're well rounded. And you know where we get them? From the churches. We get women that work in the church already and employ them to be disaster case managers because they need to make that again, it comes back to money. Um, and so often people ignore that fact. Did I answer your question, Jacob?
No, that was a no. I really like the response a lot, and it's and how you describe the dichotomy between gender relations and how women again are not only, left out in these spaces, but also face wage discrimination and, they bear more of the brunt of the admin side, but also keeping the community together. I want to expand on that by asking you this question. What role do you see women like yourself and like the women that you work with in the Northeast Houston Redevelopment Council? What role do you see women playing in addressing climate change and fighting back against it?
I From what I've done, this is not what I started out doing in life. Jacob, I worked in an elementary school as an aide in a special ed classroom, the first part of my life. And then I went to administration where I worked, it seems like the same kind of job, but it wasn't. I worked in HR and we did benefits and risk management. And so I was the assistant to the general manager. And I would take off to do disaster work. That was the crazy part is I would take my days to be for Ike. I took two weeks off from my job because the school district went back to work and I couldn't. So I think I think women are elevating the fact that we volunteer in these spaces, we become experts in things that we would not have become experts in. I know way more about illegal dumping and the mindset of the people that are dumping and the relationship they have with the community than I wanted to know. And we filed a a complaint with the Justice Department, and they came in and addressed our illegal dumping issue in the city with the city of Houston. And that wasn't just me, but I'm saying that's way outside of my scope. People ask me all the time, what prepared you for this? Actually, the thing that prepared me for this was motherhood. And in some cases, I know women that never have children, but they have the instinct to do this work. So again, the logistics side of it, the medical side of it, we're working with Harris County Health to make sure that when we have disasters, we're able to network with them or partner with them so that the people they have sitting at the hospital that aren't patients have somewhere to go. And that wasn't a question that was being asked anywhere else. It was something that we heard them say, and we've been trying to plan around it in our disaster plan. So I couldn't, if I, it's almost everything, Jacob. It is very difficult to define. I mean, I just met with a group this morning, and everybody on the call, there were 6 people on the call. 5 of them were women, but they were in the position that they saw the things and addressed the things that needed to be addressed. The gentleman was by far the highest ranking, but the women on the call had a whole different vision of this. And one woman saw where they could fit into what we're doing. And that happens a lot for us. My team is 3 people. The nonprofit is 3 people. It's myself, Ken Williams, and Keith Downey. So I'm the only woman on the team at this point. And we are a working board.
Wow.
So when people call, they get us.
Nice. I actually wanted to talk about your experience in the founding of the Northeast Houston Redevelopment Council. Can you just describe your experience founding the organization, the work you've done with it from the
we
beginning?
Yeah, 8 years ago, there were 5 of us, and we were all working in the community in some respect. Those were the people that we tapped and said, hey, would you be interested in being part of this nonprofit? And we had two women and three men, and the two of the partners needed to be other places, so they couldn't stay with us. So they were there for the formation for about a year or two, and then they had to branch off and go do other things in life. But the three of us, being a woman, there are, again, there are just things that we look at different, uh, and how we address the needs of the community. So men with their analytical brains do, or the two guys that I work with, um, I can come up with 10 programs in about 15 seconds. But the financial piece, the other pieces that they do, and I allow them to do those. Let me just be honest with you. I'm not trying to figure out, I give them a budget for how much it cost the last time we did it, and they tell me whether or not I'm being realistic, because it's a grocery list in my head. And I have a running grocery list for anything we're working on in my head. So I have to put that down on paper, send it to my guys. The board says, Huey, you're being ridiculous, or cool, we can do that. Or why don't we bump that up a little bit? Because the last time we did it, whatever. We have some contractors that work with us, and they're really people that we work with already. But at different times, we have funding and we're able to hire them to be contractors because, and I said, that's that again, they work in other places, but they work with us on a need basis. And so if we're working on a particular program and we need to hire some people, we usually hire the people that have already worked with us and understand what we do. That being said, they're usually women. Again, because even if they're retired, they're looking at, excuse me, they look at the community in a different light. Um, I have to go find guys that are retired, except for Ken and Keith. I have to go search for men that are retired. Women call me and say, "Hey, I retired, and this is what I want to work with you guys because you're doing this work I want to do in the community." And then they become experts in it. And so we've got experts that are doing workforce development, and that's not where they came from. We've got experts that are helping us to do, um, and I say experts. Dr. Bullard told me one time, you have a PhD in community engagement. Because I asked him, why am I invited to these panel discussions? I don't bring any particular expertise. He said, you do. You bring the community engagement where people think we'll have a meeting, people will just show up. When we have a meeting, there's an entire mentality that we exercise to get people into our meetings and engaged in those meetings. And if they're not engaged or they don't want to be there, we're having them send people to us that do want to be engaged. And so, but that's with every other person that works with us. And women, probably fully 80% of the people that I work with are women.
No, I love that PhD in community engagement with all the work that you do. It's very remarkable.
Well,
I have two more questions for you. What is your vision for Northeast Houston, considering all the amazing work that you do with your organization and as an organizer? What is your vision for Northeast Houston?
my vision is that my children and my relatives that moved away from the community will want to move back. And they want to move back because the lots are big. It's a slower life. I know we're 10 minutes from downtown, but it's a slower life in these communities. And we could potentially have the things that we need. That's the big thing. And so, we're right off 59. We're just off 610. We're gentrifying at a rapid pace, very frightening for us as we age and thought we could age securely in these communities. We cannot. We've got to remain active and vigilant and bringing things that the community can afford and want in back into the community, because what we also lost during each of those disasters that I mentioned is businesses and jobs, and they never come back. you get somebody new coming back in with those things that don't understand us or and don't respect us, which is why we're insecure, we're healthcare insecure, and we're there's another insecurity. Oh, health, food, healthcare. There's another one, Jacob. I can't remember what it is right now. I say it all the time. But while we suffer with those things, um, we also have a really rich history. And I don't want that history lost to gentrification or to my people who have historically lived here. We always want to be able to live and work in this environment because it is very nurturing.
Oh, I love that. And speaking of history, what you're doing is preserving it through this oral history. And so, my final question for you is this: what lesson or message would you like audience to take away from listening to your story?
I think, especially in this climate, no pun intended, that we're living in, is that I have to be proud of this place that we're in, because as much as I complain about we're uh, caged in by the railroad or freeways, whatever your thing is in your community, you figure out how to embrace it and then you work around it. And so we've developed some beautiful things here. We have a new Amanda Dixon library. It's a tech link library with all kinds of amenities. And people were looking at me going, why would you build that in the middle of this? Why would you build it next to the railroad track? Now think about it, Jacob. We're surrounded by rail. So why wouldn't I build it next to a railroad track? Why but I'm so grateful that we were able to make those things happen. We figured out during Harvey actually that parks are supposed to flood. And so now, as we work, all of our parks are minimal at best to say that we have amenities. We're working on Trinity Gardens Park to get it back up, and it's our land grant park here in Trinity Gardens. We're working to get that park where it doesn't flood and that it has amenities in it. And the plan for it is beautiful. So it's the things that I need in my community, the things that I remember. And so if I had to take something away, I'd really want people to look at where you are, be proud of where you are. Of course, there are things that take you away and make you work in other places, but be proud of where you are and be the change you want to see, somebody else's quote, in your community. And so that was what I said. I could not be anybody else. I simply had to be me. And I am the change that I want to see in my community.
Awesome. Well, Ms. Huey, thank you so much for doing this oral history with me. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording. Thank you so much.
No, thank you, Jacob. I appreciate it. And I hope that I said something that if I hear it in 100